I guess we'll ask the question to sort of delve in a little bit deeper. What's going wrong with City at the moment? Because as much as you can say for sure, it isn't catastrophic, it isn't fatal, it's still early on in the season. I think most people would agree there is an issue. There's a
Yeah.
problem that needs to be fixed. So I obviously being at the stadium went away from the game incredibly confused because I felt on the majority of it, I felt City played well, and 4-1 was not the result that game. If you played it 10 times, you get 4-1 once. A lot of the
It's a
time, I don't.
flattering. It's a flattering scoreline to spot in Lisbon.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Absolutely.
I think a win for City would have probably been a stretch. That for me, that was a 2-2 game all over. There was the madness at the start of the second half where they obviously came and sort of scored twice in crazy moments, and we'll speak about that. But I just at the moment, I think City are playing. Forget Bournemouth. Bournemouth was a terrible performance, and Guardiola said that himself. That Bournemouth were much better than City, but City were better than Sporting on the most part for 80% of it. But the bad thing City did against Sporting were catastrophically terrible. Like the Gyökeres goal in the first half, it the exact same chance happened about 5 minutes before and it was probably a harder chance. Gyökeres tried to chip the goalkeeper. It didn't really work out. I think he got a bit fortunate with the second finish, but like the warning signs were there, and it's not that City didn't listen. I just think at the moment with the setup with the midfield, they can't do anything about it because there
Yeah.
just isn't any legs, and it sounds silly. It sounds very simple, but when you put City running towards their own goal, there are no legs in there to stop it. I don't know how you sort of you interpreted that, but I just
Yeah. I
feel
mean,
there's something that isn't necessarily clicking there, and I just don't
I,
think it's going to.
I think there's a few things. Like for me, it's a massive concern. We've seen it all this season. The ability to when we lose the ball in that transition, people getting back. We've got a back
Mm,
four. Well, not even a back four. We've got a back three that is isolated. You've got Vardiol, Akanji, and for the most time Diaz as a back three. You've got Rico Lewis, who is being expected as a right back to go and play in a position for attack, like offensively, is being
mm,
asked to sit in a hole where a centre attacking mid would normally sit, i.e., De Bruyne, Foden. He's being asked to sit
mm.
in that pocket.
While
As
also
soon,
covering on that right hand side as well.
yes, but then that's what I was about to say. So then, as soon as we lose the ball, he can't get back in time. So therefore, the reliance is then on three midfielders who are a bit deeper to look for winning the
Mm,
ball. Kovacic in his own on a six is too slow. Bernardo Silva
yeah.
sometimes gets lost in possession
And
and
he's
doesn't
looking
know where he
tired
is.
because he's having to do most of the running
I
in
think
midfield
there's
himself.
I think there's some unrest in the squad as well. And Gundogan, when he plays, looks lost. I think his legs have gone completely. I think
Mm,
Barcelona have ruined him for a year. Um, it's exposing that we need Rodri and we probably need someone in January. But it's also the case of a big eye opener for me last night was with the press. We were looking to win the ball, and then when they,
mm.
which is obvious, but what I mean by that is when you get taught as a defender, you don't look at the ball, you look at the
You
person.
cut the space off. It's like
Yeah,
it's a very basic aspect of
but
defending,
then
isn't
when
it?
they're going for the ball, it's taking one little move from say Pedro for the first goal, Pedro Goncalves, to just slip inside,
Mm,
and he's got it through to Gyökeres, and then no one's tracking Gyökeres because I've seen him slip off a Kanji about 4 times.
mm,
So Kanji's in no man's land. Simpson Pusai was probably the only impressive performance that I've seen on that pitch, except Nunez and Savino. For
mm.
a 19-year-old kid to perform like that, I think is it questionable for the first goal? Should he put a foot in? But I think that's where they've then put a foot in twice later on in the game and gave away two penalties, i.e. Vardiol doesn't need to put a foot in because Akanji's covering. And the same for Mateus Nunez. He doesn't need to put a foot in. So
Yeah.
there's two goals that are given to him. But I just think there's so many issues at the minute. The midfield looks slow. I think,
Do you think I want to ask the question? I want to bring it up because I can't remember how I felt in the summer. Actually, it's been so much has happened in between them. But looking at it now, I'm thinking did City stand still with the midfield? And I don't necessarily mean, getting a Rodri back up because it's not as simple as that. Were there the players there to do that? Probably not. But you look at it and you've obviously Rodri's not there, but you've got Kovacic, who was a decent pickup for 30 million quid from Chelsea last season. He wasn't signed
absolutely.
to play this position at all, but you know, needs must. You've got Gundogan, who, yes, emotionally everybody wanted him back at the club, but it felt a bit like well, it is clearly a stopgap. It's not a long-term solution, but it felt a little bit like, okay, kind of, we need to, and it's there, and it's not spending too much money, and we're not taking that big of a risk. You've got Kevin De Bruyne when we actually see him, because that's been a luxury in the last couple of months. You've obviously got Phil Foden, who I think is getting unnecessary flack, but at the same time,
he looked good last night, though.
He did. It was probably his best performance, I think, this season, and he could have easily had a couple more assists, and he has been unlucky. But at the same time, he has to show Guardiola, he has to show City fans that is his team.
He has to be the one to take the game by the scruff of the neck. The times where De Bruyne
I'm not saying he's shirking. Yeah, I'm not saying he's shirking at all, but he needs to go to that next consistent level. It's the same, isn't it? It's the same names that we've had sort of over the last, bar Kovacic, obviously, but 3 years, 4 years. I just wonder if Guardiola and the board, or whatever, for loyalty reasons, whether or not they believe the quality's still there, they've maybe stood still a little bit. And I just, a fresh face, I don't think would have gone amiss. I don't know. I really don't know.
I think you're absolutely right, but I think there's a few kind of culminations that lead to what we're discussing. I think the first one is Shicky. I don't think the club would have wanted to outlay a big amount on potentially a sporting director who's no longer going to be there in a year. Maybe. I think Pep had the inkling of that he wanted to deal with a smaller squad, which he mentioned in pre-season.
As we know, that's nothing new, is it?
You can't foresight these injuries. Obviously, you can project potentially to understand that maybe Rodri was going to pick up an injury somewhere, not to the extent that he has with an ACL out for the season, but that was probably the only area. Maybe a backup for Haaland as well, which was discussed in the summer. But I think just going back on Haaland as well, it was something I wanted to mention earlier. I think what Gyökeres showed last night is exactly what Haaland should be doing.
It felt like watching a younger Haaland.
Not trying to win the ball in the air with his foot and, trying to kind of... It's hard to explain because Haaland's build-up play has got better. Let's not deny that. But the ability Gyökeres had to just shoulder his man, hold the ball up and be like, right, a winger's coming onto me here. Let's link it up and then I can make some space in behind once they've gone forward and cause a bit of an issue. Whereas Haaland just seems to stay very stationary in the box or on the edge of the box when the ball's coming towards him. He doesn't seem to offer that kind of, shielding that Gyökeres did last night, because Gyökeres was causing problems all over the pitch. That's the reason he got a hat-trick. But I think, obviously, the Shicky scenario, the Pep size of the squad, and I'm being truthful, I think they probably looked and thought the players that they want wouldn't have been available this summer, i.e. the Zubimendi. Samuel Ricky's been one that's been mentioned recently, which I've started to see more and more again with Zubimendi. There was probably not... I think they probably wouldn't have sold Liam Delap if they knew Alvarez was out the door as well.
I thought that similarly, because Alvarez was a late one, and it didn't come out of nowhere, but it definitely...
But it seemed like we were trying to push a few things towards the end of the window after they've both gone. Obviously, there might be a buyback clause on Liam Delap. I'm not too sure. I haven't really asked about that.
That has been mooted, but I'm not totally sure myself.
But again, I think it's also... I think the quality of players that we would have wanted. I think the fact that big players have stayed when potentially they probably thought they'd move on, i.e. Kevin De Bruyne to Saudi, Edison to Saudi, Kyle Walker to go wherever he's going. For me, I think Kyle Walker needs to move away from England. Not as a dig. Not as a dig in terms of his ability. Yes, it's dropped a little bit, but from what I've been told reportedly behind the scenes, I think he needs a fresh start for his mental health, for his own benefit. I think he needs to go and get away and have a fresh start on life and ignore all these arseholes on social media and stuff like that, because it probably gets to him. I think he's the kind of person who would let it get to him.
Absolutely. I think most people would. It's impossible to sort of look past that.
Exactly. I think they were probably looking, understanding if Shicky was going, whoever comes in has the opportunity. And that's probably what promoted, Hugo Viana to take the job. Probably the fact of, right, you are going to have a big rebuild in the summer. You're going to have an exciting project that is yours. The outlay that they probably will get. Who we get, I don't know, but I think I've seen reported today that they are moving funds or freeing funds up to sign 1 or 2 players in January. So
Which
who that is?
Who knows, and we'll deal with that in due course. But I always find one thing City have prided themselves on is not having to go into the January market because the squad was so set. And even if, injuries have never been this bad, but at the same time, I don't necessarily know if City's issues are totally surface level. Kevin De Bruyne looked like he wanted to be anywhere but playing football against Sporting when he came on for that final 10 minutes. I don't know if the TV cameras picked it up, but
I think I've seen him just instantly leave to go to the tunnel after the game.
Well, he before he did, but before that, as soon as the full-time whistle went, he sort of sprinted across to the bench, and it must have been about 2 minutes deep in conversation with a coaches. I don't know if it was the medical team. He looked like he was berating them as opposed to just discuss it and then straight down the tunnel. Obviously, there's this Jack Grealish injury that with each passing week doesn't feel or sound like an injury at all. Kyle Walker disappeared and then came back for one game randomly, and injury maybe, who knows. It just feels, and Bernardo Silva's comments as well. I agree with your point at the top where it isn't the red lights aren't being lit up at the moment. It's not. Maybe it is crisis time for some. I don't know, but
I think this season's going to be a humbling one. I think this season's going to be.
Yeah.
I'm going to say it right now, and I'll probably say it tonight when I do my video. I think this could be a season for people to set their expectations and, realize we're not going to win something every season.
Which is,
I hope I'm wrong.
For me, it's fine. I think that's fine, but I agree.
Wrong. But I think there's seasons, it could be that typical City thing where Pep in his first season doesn't win anything, and if it's going to be Pep's last season, doesn't win anything again. But I think the comments that he made last night as well, I don't think he's up going anywhere.
He sounds like he's up for it. And I think if we're looking at how possibly City get him to extend this little mini wobble in, just before Christmas.
I've seen a conspiracy that somewhere players are down in tools so that he extends. If anything, if they're down in tools and he extends, they're gone. They're out.
Yeah. I wouldn't give that much credence.
I think Pep would probably.
It's interesting. I'm not. Yeah, I'm not suggesting. I don't think anyone with the correct sort of outlook is suggesting this is on the manager. If anything, the one person you want in this situation to turn it around is the manager. My doubt and my fear is the players are just exhausted, both from a physical point of view. They've been playing so much football, but also we ask the same question every year, and City end up winning the league, and we all look a bit silly. But
my gripe would
what's
be,
there to do? What's there to do when they've done it already?
There's nothing. But my gripe would be in the next coming weeks, not weeks. I do weep sometimes.
We will be weeping if it gets any worse than this results-wise.
But I do just think it will be a massive kick in the teeth when they're talking about exhaustion, being in dark places, injuries. If you see international squad lists come out and Bernardo Silva, Ruben Diaz, John Stones, Kyle Walker, Rico Lewis. I know Kevin De Bruyne has said that he's not going on the November one, but he probably will be on the next one. If you see all of these go on international duty, I'm not saying that they should reject it, but I think they should be mindful. Like Pep's comments the other week, I was fuming at John Stones when he got injured, and obviously it's international clubs, team is responsible after the players for the club. But I will be very upset if I see a lot of them going after the comments that they're making that they're tired and exhausted, because that is an opportunity for you to have 2 weeks, no games, rest, recoup, do a little bit of training here and there at the club, and then you're ready. Because we've got a tough game coming after the international break. Spurs at home, and no doubt they'll be up for it.
The fixture list is horrible. I think City's next 3 league matches are Brighton, Spurs, and potentially Liverpool as well. So that's
and Nottingham Forest after that, which we would never normally say is going to be a tough game, but they're third at the minute.
Yeah, flying. So it might have to get a little bit worse before it gets better. Who knows? That was the first part of the show. If you want more, make sure to check the City Ramble wherever you get your podcasts from.